Hi, this is Rodney Dowd, and I'm here to show you again another few tips on how to do well in the SAT essay. Specifically, how to understand the prompt, because understanding the prompt is the key thing that allows you to write a good essay, come up with examples very quickly, and come up with ideas that teachers will actually respond well to, the people who are going to be grading the essay. So we want to get into that. Now before we do, I want to show you how one of the common ways that people go wrong when they are preparing for the SAT essay. And as you'll see here, we've got a prompt here, and the prompt starts out with a quote. This is how they normally start. And then after that, there's the assignment and there's a question. And then it says plan and write an essay. And that's the same information you get all the time. Now, the way people normally read is from top to bottom. Now, normally that's a good idea, but on the SAT essay it's actually not. One of the things I found is that people will write about what's in the quote, even if that's not exactly what's in the essay. So, for example, the assignment, for example, this quote is about technology. The first word there, technology, you can see. But that's not what the essay's about. If you look at the assignment, let's read the assignment together. Do the changes that make our lives easier, not necessarily make them better. Okay, so that's the quote. Now, once you've got that, then you can look at the quote here after you've looked at the assignment and notice what it says. Technology promises to make our lives easier, freeing them up for leisure pursuits. But the rapid pace of technological innovation and the split-second processing capabilities of computers that can work virtually non-stop have made all of us feel rushed. We have adopted the relentless pace of the very machines that were supposed to simplify our lives, with the result that, whether at work or play, people do not feel like their lives have changed for the better. Adapted from Karen Finnegan, Life in the Fast Lane. Okay, now that is about technology, and of course it really is about change. Now, since we read the assignment first, instead of the quote, we could say, oh yeah, it's about change. Technology is just one example of change. Technological change is one of the things that's been going on. So we won't get fooled, but my students ended up writing about technology, and not only that, but they didn't even think of technology usually in the broader sense. Technology is anything that human beings create to make their lives easier is actually technology. That includes tools like hammers and nails and wheels and things like that. They're all technology. And of course they wrote about modern day technology because that's what they're used to. Of course we all live in the modern day. But they didn't have a lot of examples to write about for this topic, actually, believe it or not. Do the changes make our lives easier, not necessarily make them better? They were writing about technology. Did technology make our lives easier? And again, that gave them fewer examples, and they didn't have examples from the two different categories of examples that will give you the highest scores, history and literature, because they weren't able to see how this related to history or literature because it had the word technology in it. So you don't want to fall into that pitfall. That's one of the first things you want to know so that you don't fall into it. Okay, well, the thing that will cause you to avoid that problem as well as others is if you can understand this basic couple of principles that I'm going to give you here. And the principles allow you, or these techniques allow you to make sure that you are always understanding the prompt very carefully and that you are always on topic with something that will impress teachers, not just be on topic, but on topic with something that is impressive to them. Here we are. So I want to take you back to the to prompt 1. This is the prompt that was given on Saturday, March 12th, the very first day that the new SAT was given with the SAT essay. And we'll use this as an example here because I think this example can work really well, and plus it's really from the SAT. All right, and with this example, I'm going to show you my prompt dissection technique. And the prompt dissection technique involves basically 3 different steps. You ask a question. First, you find out what are the main concepts. So, for example, in this prompt, if we look at it, it says assignment is the opinion of the majority in government or in any other circumstances a poor guide. So basically what you do is you take a look at the main words here. Sorry, what you do is you take a look at the main words, and then you circle the ones that are the main concepts, like majority and guide. Those are the two main concepts that you've got. So you want to take a look at that. Is the opinion of the majority in government under any circumstances a poor guide? So you read that, you circle the main concepts. Then you go and read the quote here and see if that is, if you can see the same concepts there. We must seriously question the idea of majority rule. The majority grinned and jeered when Columbus said the world was round. The majority threw him into a dungeon for his discoveries. Where is the logic in the notion that the opinion held by the majority of people should have the power to influence our decisions? Okay, decisions guide. All right. So we've circled the main concepts. We know clearly the main thing has to do with majority and whether it is a good guide to making decisions, to understanding what to do. Okay, so then then we've got step 1. Now step 2, though, of prompt dissection is to then ask ourselves a couple of questions. And the first question that you want to ask yourself when you're trying to do well on the SAT essay is the question, and I'm going to write this down here for you. Oh, looks like it doesn't want to leave the screen. All right. Okay. What you want to do is write down the question. So, and this is a question to help us discover what information is in our brain that can help us do well on the test. And if you don't have enough information in your brain, in my book, SAT Essay Success, it tells you how to get that information, how to literally download it into your brain so you'll be prepared on the test. But what you want to do is ask yourself, does the idea of majority being a good or bad guide to making decisions show up in history or literature? And if you think about it, you probably think, well, yeah, probably. The answer is yes. So then the second question is, what are some examples? And then you start listing examples. Now, what I do instead of listing examples, actually I shouldn't even put what are some examples, is I have people actually list out just what's in their head very, very quickly. Don't try to find examples. Just remember all the books you read in school. So, for example, if you do that, you might say, some books I read. And historical events I studied. And just make a list of them. So, Romeo and Juliet, for example. You might have read that already. Lord of the Flies. Antigone. You might have read that, you might not have. World War II. Hitler. You might want to write Napoleon. Invasion of Russia. Oops, looks like I misspelled a word here as I was typing. Invasion of Russia. Oops. It actually should be Russia. Alright, Battle of Britain, which took place in World War II. Assassination of Caesar the Great. The book To Kill a Mockingbird. Alright, so those are a couple of examples, things you could come up with. Now what you want to do is, remember our concept here, majority rule. Is it a good guide to making decisions? Let's look. Does the concept of majority rule show up in Romeo and Juliet? You should be able to say yes or no. Don't know if it really shows up to me. I mean, maybe you'll find something, but I personally don't see something. But how about Lord of the Flies? Was there a majority rule? Majorities making decisions? They did have the conch shell. They did vote on things. The majority of boys eventually went wild. So I would say yes, majority rule. That concept does show up in Lord of the Flies. How about in Antigone? Antigone is a story about, a king and his decision. So it's not really about the majority, so I wouldn't take Antigone. How about World War II and Hitler and all that? Well, the majority of people in Germany put Hitler in power, so I would choose that. Napoleon's invasion of Russia, it's a decision really of one man. I wouldn't say that. Battle of Britain, Britain versus, versus Germany versus Hitler. I would if you have to think that much about it, it's usually not that great an idea, or you just haven't thought of it. Assassination of Caesar the Great. Again, it's a majority of people in the Senate I think, who just made that decision. I'm not sure if it's a majority or not, so I won't put that one down, because it may have been a minority of the people in the Senate. Actually, no, people celebrated in the Senate, so it could be that it was a majority. But anyhow, if you know this example, you would want to make sure you know it well and be confident about it. To Kill a Mockingbird, the majority of people in the town thought that Tom Robinson was guilty. They also wanted to lynch him with a mob. So that's an example of majority rule for sure. And actually, let's take this. Yeah. So now you have a few examples. Now all you have to do is say which thesis does it support. Now most people will actually decide which thesis they're going to support, yes or no. Yes, it's a good majority is a good rule, or no, it's not a good way to rule, or a good way to make decisions. But what you want to do is find your examples and see which one you have the best examples for. So, for example, here, Lord of the Flies, does it support the idea that majority rule is a good guide or a bad guide? It looks like it supports that it's a bad guide, from what I remember of the story. World War II Hitler would show that the majority of people, who decided to support Hitler in Germany in the beginning anyway, that was a bad guide. That would be an example of it being a bad guy. Assassination of Caesar the Great, that one is a little up for grabs, whether you agree that it should be assassinated or not, so I don't know about that. You might be able to support both points of view with that, and you'd have to choose one. To Kill a Mockingbird, that one would definitely show the majority is wrong, because the majority was wrong about Tom Robinson. So basically we've got three examples that we know we can support that can be used to support that majority rule is not always a good guide. And basically, when you have this, you now have your three examples you're going to use in your essay. So by understanding the prompt and dissecting it and thinking about it carefully and going through this process, and again, I'll summarize this process for you. Step 1, circle keywords in the prompt, and make sure you always read the assignment first and then the quote so you don't get confused. Alright, step 2 is to ask if the key concepts show up in literature and history. And they almost always will, but it's good to ask that question. And then after you ask that question, brainstorm examples. And after you brainstorm examples, the last thing you want to do is, let me move this here, select the best examples. And those are your basic 4 steps for prompt dissection. So circle the keywords in the prompt, ask if the key concepts show up in literature and history, brainstorm examples from literature and history as long as you have them, and then select the best examples. And basically when you go through this process, you end up becoming really good at it if you practice it a few times. Most of my students didn't need to practice every single day to get good at this, even though if you have the time, I would suggest that you do that at least once a week until you prepare for the test, or if this is the week or the day of the test, try this technique at least once or twice. Remember, it takes 25 minutes to write an essay, so that's almost an hour of practice if you do this twice in one day. But if you do this once and you just memorize this process, you will discover that you are able to do really, really well on the SAT essay. My students improved from scores of 4, 5, and 6 up to 11 and 12. So then again, this is just one technique. If you want to find out more though, I would go visit my website. And my website is satsay.net. So I have a lot of free information and free resources to help you do well on the test. And you can also send me a message from that website and ask me any questions that you want to have. I also, on occasion, will make the offer to grade free essays for people so that they can find out if they're doing a good job in their SAT essays. And I also have an SAT ebook called SAT Essay Success, which you can find on the ebook link on that site. So this is Rodney signing off, and good luck on your exam.